this weekend. And not everyone thinks those numbers will improve under Johnson, who has made several conflicting comments on whether or not he supports defunding the police.
We know the mayor of Chicago here, rebuked this call to redirect money to defund this failed, system of incarceration and policing. I don't look at it as a slogan. It's an actual, real political goal.
They're not differing positions. I never said we're going to take money away from the police.
The $150 million was not redirecting the funds away from the police?
Directing it towards implementing the consent decree. Directing those dollars to make sure that we hire and train and promote 200 more detectives. To make sure that we are implementing the laws that are on the books, like our red flag laws. I've never said I was going to cut the police budget.
Lauren Blanchard has more on the new mayor's agenda. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning, Ashley, Joey. Later this morning, new Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson will be sworn into a job with no small task. Figure out how to stop crime in his city. Johnson will need to learn to work with police and his constituents. Even though just a few years ago he was part of the calls to defund police, now he says his policies will go after the root causes of crime. So far, Chicago police report that murders are down slightly from this time last year, but still are in the hundreds. Motor vehicle thefts are up 130%. Just yesterday, on Mother's Day, a gang of 4 robbers driving around went after 10 people in only 30 minutes, threatening them with semi-automatic weapons. Police are still looking for the suspects. Adding to the violence, according to ABC7 in Chicago, this past weekend alone across the city, 25 people were shot, 6 died. Some of the victims just 16 and 17 years old. The soon-to-be Mayor Johnson will follow outgoing Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who lost her re-election campaign by massive numbers for her failure to rein in crime. This is how the Chicago Tribune summed up Lightfoot's time in office, a combative mayor who led Chicago through crises, some of her own making. Neither the Tribune nor most other outlets were granted an exit interview with Lightfoot. Instead, she said in her farewell address that her administration created real change. One of the first things Mayor Johnson will need to do in office, pick out a new police superintendent. The former superintendent, David Brown, is turning 63 this year, the CPD's mandatory retirement age. Ashley, Joey.
All right, Lauren Blanchard, thank you. Meantime, Chicago residents are speaking out about the city's plan to house migrants in an abandoned high school, saying the move would endanger black residents. Listen.
All black stakeholders that have concerns should have been afforded the adequate space and notice and decision which ultimately impacts the value of our land, safety, and peace. We have been redlined, Jim Crow, pushed out enough.
This comes after outgoing Mayor Lori Lightfoot declared a state of emergency as more migrants head to Chicago. Quote, the city of Chicago is in the midst of a national humanitarian crisis, and through a unified effort in accordance with its values as a welcoming city, Chicago is doing everything it can to respond to the urgency of this matter. And then later on, we're going to check in with Gianno Caldwell, who is having breakfast with friends just outside of Chicago to find out what exactly voters think of the city's new mayor.
Into another Fox News alert, border agents are bracing for another busy week at the border as migrant shelters fill up to more than double capacity.
But if you ask the Biden administration, they're going to say the end of Title 42 at the border is going, quote, rather smoothly. Alexandria Hoff is joining us from Washington with the latest. Good morning, Alexandria.
Well, good morning, Ashley, Joey. Vice President Harris responded to the end of Title 42 this weekend from the wealthy Atlanta suburb of Buckhead, so she was nowhere near the southern border. She received criticism for being there for a fundraiser for the state party and responded by saying this. I hear that everything over the last couple of days is going rather smoothly, given what the concerns were. And the bottom line, however, is that the issue of immigration falls squarely within the responsibility of the United States Congress, so we've done what we can. Well, Texas Governor Greg Abbott doesn't believe that that is true. Yesterday, a busload of migrants were dropped off near the vice president's residence right here in D.C. Multiple buses did the same over the fall and winter of last year. And President Biden wasn't at his primary residence either this weekend, saying from Delaware that the situation at the border, well, he thinks it's going well. Listen.
Do you think things are going at the border, sir?
Much better than you all expected.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I think. Pardon me?
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
Not in the near term, no. No, just be disruptive, not anything else.
I heard a little chuckle there, but video shows this overcrowding at the Border Patrol's processing center in El Paso. Congressman Tony Gonzalez says that max capacity is around 1,000, but what you're seeing there is 6 times as many. Those migrants were there on Friday. But, you know, illegal crossings since then have really eased up since the end of Title 42. Much of that has to do with the Texas National Guard coming in to serve as a block. There's also migrants going to ports of entry as well. But sources tell Fox News they do not expect this lull to last. We're also learning that Border Patrol agents in California arrested an Afghan national who was on the FBI terror watch list. He had crossed into the U.S. illegally with a group on Wednesday that was in California, and fingerprinting gave away his status. Ashley and Joey, we'll send it back to you. You see those images there? I mean, you see the trash left in its wake. There were people that were waiting, coming in, but it's a moving dynamic. And yes, sources once again say that they're expecting this lull to end and more people to start funneling back into our southern border.
Yeah, the lull might end, but the damage is done when you see images like we just saw in your hit there, Alexandra. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
We're going to bring in former NASDAQ reporter Krisha Linzo. Krisha, thank you as always for being with us this morning. As we saw just there in Alexandria's hit, you cannot deny that what we're seeing with those migrant shelters being at more than max capacity. I mean, it's insane what we're seeing. And then we've got Mayorkas saying that the numbers have come down. So however you look at this, I mean, when you're seeing 10K of illegal immigrants coming in before the end of Title 42, the people are here. You know, they're not going away. They're staying here. So when you look at this from a financial standpoint, this is going to fall back on the American taxpayer, is it not?
100%. And the fact that Alejandro Mayorkas is coming out and saying that, oh, the numbers are coming down and taking a victory lap here is a complete dereliction of duty. This is falling on the American taxpayer. It's already cost us over $100 billion. Breaking that down, as of right now, the numbers are $75,000 per household, just as of what we know right now. But to look even further into the numbers, we're seeing that, yes, the numbers have come down, but thanks to the Texas National Guard, who stepped up where the federal government has not. And this is really disheartening to think that the Biden administration is touting their achievements at this moment of crisis. It's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, it's hard to see a victory lap happening because you've come down from where it's really bad to where it's bad but not as bad. Talking about just the financial hardship, I come from a town that's mostly Hispanic, and for the 80s and 90s was mostly illegal immigrants working in factories and places like that. 2008 hits and they all leave because the jobs aren't there. What happens if we go into financial crisis? I mean, our homelessness and our out of work people will just skyrocket again, will it not?
It will. And it's not just the numbers here. It's actually who is coming into our country, as you both know. I mean, just this past weekend, we had someone from the terror watch list from an Afghan nationalist who came in across our border, and he was on the terror watch list, that is. And these are numerous criminals who are coming in across our border, as well as potential terrorists. And this will totally upset business, of course. How could this not? It's absolutely scary.
Well, and like you were talking about the money aspect of it. Back in October, Eric Adams said just in New York City it was going to cost $1 billion to house them. Now we're up to what, $4.5 billion? So that number is just going to keep going up, and we're just going to have to keep paying because we're the only people who can pay, you know, these dollar amounts for them. But we have to get to this. 17 retailers have ditched San Francisco's Union Square since 2020, and then this was a real attention grabber. During a surprise show in the city, comedian Dave Chappelle reportedly asked the audience what the F happened to this place, and then told a story about eating at an Indian restaurant and the Tenderloin a few nights earlier, only to have someone defecate in front of the restaurant as he was walking in. So not only is it disgusting, it's filthy, there's the homeless crisis, the drug crisis, but you've got all these retailers leaving. So what happens to the economy of these cities when they're all gone?
And this is not a unique instance here that he just referenced. In the Tenderloin district, yes, that's an area in San Francisco that tends to have a high crime population and just are lower, socioeconomic status. But this is happening all across San Francisco, where people are paying increased taxes. The Union Square part of San Francisco, T-Mobile just closed, and numerous other businesses shuttered their doors. And people are fleeing the city of San Francisco because of increased homelessness. there are over 30% more people are now homeless in San Francisco in the city, and also 12% fewer people who want to become cops. Unsurprisingly, they don't want to become officers. There's no incentive.
Well, I think you're hitting on the point here, which is that it's not just that these cities are bad in the ways of crime or homelessness, defecating in street, things like that. It's the mass exodus that's going to cause even more problems. I mean, that can't be the answer. I don't know the federal government can fix that, but what is the political answer to keep people? I come from Georgia, where Buckhead's trying to annex itself from the city of Atlanta, which is a huge tax base. So I guess my question is, how can these politicians not see the long-term problem that's coming from this?
I don't know how they can't see it, because we're all seeing it. Certainly, Dave Chappelle is seeing it. There's now an app in San Francisco, not to be gross, but that you could tell where people have defecated on the streets.
Wow.
I mean, that it's gotten that bad, right? And also, just generally, Elon Musk too has talked about why he's moving his businesses out of California. I mean, it's clear the reason why is because the homeless population has skyrocketed. Over 30% of the homeless population is in San Francisco throughout the United States. So that's a real hub.
Maybe that's why Californians want Gavin Newsom to run for president. Get him out of their state.
Oh, yeah. And then he's everywhere. But we do have to get to this one. Switching gears to the former U.S. Attorney Brett Tolman, who wants to know why Washington, D.C. and the media are not asking more questions about the allegations of the Biden family corruption. Listen to this.
It is the kind of case that was the bread and butter of the fraud and corruption unit at DOJ. We're looking at a DOJ who refuses to prosecute certain cases now that have a political angle to them. This is the stuff I back up and I look at and I say, we're in bizarro world. This is DOJ, the heart of what DOJ really was organized for.
You know, Krisha, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't money leave a trail? And if we don't have these answers, doesn't it seem like these federal agencies, maybe they just don't want to look for them?
They don't want to look for them, and that's really what he was just saying just now, because if you're looking at the LLCs that the Biden family is connected to, it's over $10 million worth of money and possibly upwards of 25 different LLCs. I mean, what is that money being used for? What sort of legitimate business does the Biden family, which in this case it seems like the Biden crime family,
everybody's calling it that,
need for, what are they actually doing? And yes, we're looking into the evidence right now. The Congressional Oversight Committee is subpoenaing the documents, but really it's more than circumstantial. We will get that information, and once we do, we'll make all of these different connections, which we've already seen are very much out there in the open.
Yeah, I think it's hard to call it just partisanship at this point. I think most Americans have questions about this. Yeah. Krisha, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Krisha.
Thanks for having me.
All right, to another Fox News alert overnight. China sentenced a 78-year-old U.S. citizen to prison for life on spying charges. He was detained more than 2 years ago by counterintelligence officials in southeastern China. In a brief statement, the Chinese court says he quote, was found guilty of espionage, sentenced to life imprisonment, and deprived of political rights for life, without giving any more details. The sentencing comes as President Biden will travel to Hiroshima, Japan, for the Group of 7 Major Industrial Nations Summit later this week.
The legal defense fund for Marine veteran Daniel Penny is nearing $2 million in donations. Penny is facing a second-degree manslaughter charge in the death of Jordan Neely after Penny restrained him in a chokehold on a New York City subway earlier this month. The attorney for the Marine veteran believes Penny's arrest struck a chord with people nationwide as support continues to pour in. He is currently free on a $100,000 bond after turning himself in on Friday. The Give, Send, Go donation page also mentions any extra funds not used for Penny's defense will be donated to a mental health advocacy program in New York City. Penny's attorneys are still waiting to get access to key documents, including Neely's autopsy report, which they say could be revealing. And I'm so glad that we have a chance to talk about this, being a former Marine yourself. You guys are trained to jump in and take care of things. And I feel like in this type of situation, this Marine that jumped in, he took care of it, and now he's being persecuted. But you have to look at how many people are, it's really rocked the nation, Joey, with look at the number of dollars with $2 million in donations already.
You know what kills me about this, there's a word that people bring into this conversation, and it's about responsibility. What is your responsibility in a situation like this? Well, I have been told by the United States government through the United States Marine Corps that for the rest of my life, my responsibility is to provide and protect, to provide for and to protect the freedom and security of the people around me. We say once a Marine, always a Marine. That's not just some silly tagline. That's an ethos that's driven into us and told to us for the rest of your life. You take the training and the skill set and the awareness you have, you apply it to every situation so that you can protect the innocent. And let me tell you, the difference between what they're saying, which is that this person was crazy or mentally ill, the difference between mentally ill and evil, if they're attacking you, is a diagnosis you don't have access to. So if all you see is someone aggressively coming at you, it is your responsibility, if you have the means, to protect those around you. The other part of this is, which leads me to say, I see no problem. I don't see how in any world you can say that he was wrong for taking action. The other side of this is, what action did he take and at what point should he have stopped? I think the defense has a strong case to say, as long as that person has the ability to attack you, you have to keep them mitigated. That's what we're taught. It comes down to what was his intent and what did he understand about the maneuver he was using. We're taught specifics on chokeholds, but when adrenaline takes over, this guy's 24 years old. It isn't like he spent a career in the Marine Corps.
Right.
He got a little bit of training on a lot of things, not a lot of training on one thing. And I really hate the people that come in and attack him and say, well, as a Marine, he should be able to tell the difference. Well, that's not how it works.
Like you said, you don't have his medical records. You didn't know what his intention was. You just saw a threat, and he wanted to try and eliminate the threat at the time.
Exactly
I mean, and you heard people on the train. There was a woman last week who said that Neely was making threats of killing people. When a Marine, or really it should be anyone, any man step in and say, you know what, this person is a threat to not only me, but every single person on this train and in this area. I've got to do something to subdue him. It's unfortunate that the man died, but it makes me nervous that more people will not step in because of how this is being treated.
And that's the key right there. Hardly anyone of seriousness is saying, well, he obviously meant to kill him. And hardly anyone of seriousness is saying, well, I'm glad that guy died. Like, we can understand, and everyone agree on, this is tragedy. And why is it? What caused it? What allowed for it? You can't call this vigilante justice, because vigilante justice only exists in a world where there is real justice and police and resources and people feel safe and someone takes it on themselves to do it anyway. In this scenario, there is no justice opportunity on the subway in New York City because it's lawlessness.
Yeah, great point, Joey. Great point. Now to this, thousands of law enforcement officers are descending on Washington, D.C. to kick off National Police Week on Saturday. Officers, their families, and crowds of supporters came together for the 35th annual Candlelight Vigil. There, they read the names of the 556 officers who paid the ultimate sacrifice, giving their lives in the line of duty.
To pay them proper tribute, each of their names will be read as part of the ceremony and will forever be etched on the walls of the National Memorial and in the hearts of a grateful nation. To all law enforcement professionals who serve and protect us, thank you.
Those 556 names include 224 officers killed last year and 332 who passed in years prior. And it is all eyes on Iowa, where Governor Ron DeSantis spent the weekend generating even more buzz around a potential 2024 announcement. And Fox News caught up with voters as campaign season kicks into high gear.
I'm concerned with integrity in Washington. I'm concerned with trying to make sure that government is responsible.
I don't think it could get any worse. If you look at the borders completely open, inflation, it's hard to even go to the grocery store.
We're going to tell you what else we learned ahead of the high-stakes. Suspected killer could stall his extradition to the U.S. for months as he faces extortion charges in connection to the 2005 disappearance. A high-ranking law enforcement official tells Fox News that Dutch citizen Joran van der Sloot has been unruly in a Peruvian prison while serving time for a separate murder he committed in 2010. That official also says police could presume that van der Sloot may have killed Holloway because of his, quote, murderous attitude. Holloway went missing during a spring break trip in 2005, and her remains have never been recovered. Washington state's new gun control laws are facing backlash after the governor came out strongly for a ban on AR-15 rifles.
There is no reason that anybody needs a weapon of war that is designed for only one purpose, and that is to shoot and kill and maim mass numbers of people in seconds.
But some of the criticism against Governor Inslee is coming from women who say the ban is a form of discrimination because those firearms keep them safe.
Jane Milhant is one of those women. She's a firearms trainer and member of the Washington State Rifle and Pistol Association. She joins us now. Jane, thanks so much for joining us. Listen, this is something that I am very passionate about. I understand actually the history of the AR-15 or the carbine rifle. I understand that it was designed in part so someone of any size can use it, and it certainly was not designed to kill as many people as possible. What's your take on this?
Yes, it's exactly that. The AR-15, or the modern sporting rifle as it's called, is the favorite rifle amongst women. And the reason for that is because we can adjust it to fit our smaller size. There is little to no recoil. And that makes it safer to shoot than, say, like a 30-06 bolt-action hunting rifle or a shotgun that has a lot more recoil.
Yeah, I mean, when I sat here and I thought about it, and you talk about the recoil for a female shooting, it is actually one of the easiest guns to use for women. Jane, I want your take on Washington in general and really lawmakers. Do you think a lot of these people making these laws just have a misunderstanding of guns?
Well, I do think that they have a misunderstanding, but also they have an agenda. And that agenda is to fully disarm the law-abiding citizens in the state of Washington. The misinformation, like they say these rifles are weapons of war, these are not used by the military at all. And that misinformation scares the public. And I will tell you that we had more people on our side contacting the legislature, but they just don't listen to us. And so it's more of an agenda than a misunderstanding by lawmakers. Our Attorney General and Governor fully know that these are not military rifles, but they continue every year to chip away at the rights of the citizens. Meanwhile, they don't do anything to punish the criminals who are actually committing the crimes.
Jane, our own Fox News poll found that only 43% of registered voters believe stricter gun laws will actually make the country safer. A majority say it will either make no difference at all or make America less safe. I know some of the manufacturers in your state. I know that, from my understanding, this bill actually goes beyond buying and also goes to manufacturing, so in an attempt to prohibit manufacturing. Other states like California have taken this rifle and passed legislation to adapt it, but not made it completely illegal. What is the court case here? What is? I know you all are suing. What's the standing that you have, and do you feel like you can win?
Well, there are several lawsuits right now going on. Some are from organizations inside the state of Washington. And then we have like the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the NRA, and Firearm Coalition, Policy Coalition from outside the state are suing. And I think that there have been court cases like Bruin and so forth that have held up the law-abiding citizens' right to own firearms under the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. And we also have the Washington State Constitution, which under Article 1, Section 24, gives us, the citizens, the right to bear arms in the state of Washington. And the modern sporting rifle is a commonly used rifle. It's in dozens, thousands, millions of households. So it's not a military rifle. It's not something that's unique. It's just a common rifle that's used. And the caliber, too, is from the .22 caliber.
Well, that's exactly
and then
right.
up to
you know, they use this term high-powered rifle. They don't know what it means. You're exactly right. Listen, Jane Milhant, thank you so much for joining us. And let's hope we understand Washington State has a wilderness. There's a need to protect yourself. It's not just Seattle. And let's hope you all can win in this and bring Second Amendment rights back to your state.
Yes, we hope to do that. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, ma'am.
McCarthey, which is expected to happen tomorrow. Listen.
It's never as good to characterize a negotiation in the middle of a negotiation. I remain optimistic because I'm a congenital optimist, but I really think there's a desire on their part as well as ours to reach agreement.
The president also taking a victory lap over the end of Title 42. Here's what he's saying about the chaos at our border.
How do you think things are going at the border, sir?
Much better than you all expected.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I think. Pardon me?
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
Not in the near term, no.
Secretary Mayorkas said this morning that the numbers at the border have gone down since Title 42 was lifted. Are you confident that the numbers have peaked, that they'll continue to go down?
Look, they have gone down. My hope is they'll continue to go down, but we have a lot more work to do. And we need some more help from the Congress as well.
According to DHS, more than 10,000 people crossed the border on Friday and Saturday, including more than 6,000 that Friday, right after the end of Title 42. Here's 2024 presidential candidate Larry Elder on Joe Biden's first term so far.
I've never seen a president do so much damage in such little time. He reversed all the Donald Trump policies that gave us the most secure border in our history. We had low interest rates. We had low inflation. Now we have gas prices that are 50% higher than they were when he first came in. We went from being energy independent to energy dependent. I've never seen anything like this. We have crime in our streets because of the soft on crime DAs and because of the anti-cop rhetoric on the part of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I don't know what's going right. I really don't.
One thing that's definitely not going right, 20 homeless veterans have been kicked out of an upstate New York hotel to make room for migrants being bused there from New York City. The CEO of the YIT Foundation, which is helping to house those vets, tells the New York Post, whether you agree with asylum seekers being here or not, that we are supposed to protect, we need to put them first. New York State Assemblyman and spokesman for the foundation, Brian Marr, joins me now. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Listen, first of all, tell us what the YIT Foundation is and why they're involved in this.
No, it's amazing. I get to join you this morning and talk about a personal friend, someone who's an American hero, Sharon Tony Finch. And this is an individual who was an Iraq combat veteran who was part of a motorcade that was annihilated by